This is a Clouds weather alert.
Good late Saturday afternoon, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, giving you the latest on our winter weather situation. I don't really want to call it a winter storm per se, though. We may end up getting a winter storm warning for some of our northern counties. There is a winter storm warning to the north of our viewing circle, but we do have a winter weather advisory in play, despite being in the 60s here in South Georgia, and many spots it's in the 70s here to where we're at around Stark. We're not expecting winter weather here in terms of any type of snow at this point. I'd be really surprised if we even get a flurry here at this point around Stark. But to the north and west, the further north and west you go, the chances are a little bit different. Now, there will be some rain tomorrow. We'll have to make sure, that we get enough wind there, which it should be pretty windy tomorrow to dry things out so we don't have black ice in a few isolated spots tomorrow night. But as we're looking towards Stark, we're not too concerned. But further to the north and west is a different story, as we're seeing growing confidence there in the forecast. And I'll go ahead and pull up the graphic now. We're going to show you what we're talking about in terms of the winter weather advisory here. So, talking about some light/wet snow expected on Sunday in the noted counties. So, I'm talking about the ones that are highlighted and underlined here. Is what we have a winter weather advisory for your Sunday. So, that does include areas like Bainbridge there. You have Camilla in here. You have Moultrie, Albany, of course, Leesburg, Ocilla, Douglas, Adel. You kind of get the idea here as we're looking and as we're tracking things. Aspirin there as well. So, again, just trying to give you guys the very latest on this situation there as we looked in toward that Sunday. Most of this will be in the morning here. We might get a little lingering in early afternoon. But as we're looking here, the dividing line here with the overall temperature profile looks to be one where we're going to have maybe a little bit more snow further up toward our northwest counties and north of our area here than what we were even talking about the other day. Granted, we talked about there was a margin for error, but as we get down toward like even Waycross, it might be tough now. It might be tough to even get a half-inch of snow. You might just be lucky to get some flurries based on the latest assessment here. Not a guarantee, but if you want to see snow tomorrow, you want to get more into one of these areas. And granted, another thing to keep in mind here, this is not, this is why I'm trying to maybe not call it a winter storm. Granted, there's a winter storm warning in the north around Macon and, even just north of our area in Americus and Cordell, which I'll show you here. I'll go ahead and show that to you now. In fact, the reason I know up there they're going to have more snow potentially according to the latest information, but you see that there in that pink area. That's where we had the winter storm warning. You see Americus, Cordell, Abbeville, Eastman, Dublin. I know they were down, really cold when we were on our late Thursday update. Just incredible cold. I mean, we got down to 18 though later in the night here, and in the morning east of Stark, 17.5 to be precise. Friday morning, the coldest since I've been, keeping tabs of the readings, but since 2021. But as you look up toward Warner Robins and Macon there, you see they're in this here as well, and they could get up to 3 inches of snow. That's the forecast, 1 to 3 inches of snow up there. But we have a situation where, in general, it's going to be one where things are going to have trouble sticking. And if they're above freezing, that's what we're expecting really for our area. Maybe up north they get that more so, but in our covered area, we're going to have trouble getting below 32 during the actual ongoing snow. Now, tomorrow night, that's a different story. But during the ongoing snow here, we're going to have trouble actually, being that cold. So it may not stick as much, meaning we're not going to maybe have ice and may probably not have too much sleet with this either. Now, that depends on some different things. But this overall is more about snow here as we're looking, which would actually make it more enjoyable if you do want to, like, show the kids some snow. Maybe go to one of these areas here in the yellow slash, in the underlined area with the different counties. So again, that's something, a word of advice. This is not maybe quite as hazardous. It still could be slippery in spots, especially overpasses there and bridges. Don't get me wrong. Still gotta be very careful. Probably still have accidents because of the weather. I mean, if you have the snow coming down pretty heavy at points, even if it's not accumulating that much on the surface because that's above 32, it still could be pretty hard to see. You're already having rain, and then you get that turn to snow, even if it doesn't accumulate that much because of the ground temperature. you still could have some reduced visibility. So you got to be keeping that in mind. You still got to be very careful, but this is an event that's a little bit easier, in theory to travel. I may still want to get out ahead of it, and then you wait, and watch it as it happens, and then go back after as the snow really doesn't accumulate too much, and you don't have much of that on the ground, really just mainly the rain. So that's something to keep in mind. But again, that winter weather advisory tomorrow, you have Bainbridge, you have Arizona Albany, you have Leesburg, you have areas further off, toward the west as well, like Dawson there in Terrell County, Cuthbert and Randolph County. Just trying to give you an overview because I know some folks are watching different sporting events this afternoon, and maybe tuning in and out. But just leading off the top here, we do have folks, that are under this for that snow potential. We're going to have some snow in these areas. It would look like some of the southern fringes, and maybe, on the lower end as we get to the northwestern areas there. Maybe a little bit more, so like up toward Albany and Tipton. I'll see you in a minute. It's possible, in the higher end situation here, we could get up to 2 inches. Granted, most of that would only accumulate really much, unless we get the temperatures fall colder than expected. Most of that would only accumulate on elevated surfaces like bridges, overpasses, things along those lines, those car tops. So I know it's weird. We're talking about, 60s and 70s right now, but tomorrow it's going to be cold 40s, 50s here. Some areas obviously only in the 30s as we get further up toward the north. Again, as we're looking during the daytime hours. So again, we're just watching this very carefully with this winter weather advisory, not a winter storm warning for any of our counties right now. We're keeping the logo red, though, because of the active winter weather. We have the freezing conditions. We had some of that last night. It got down briefly there. It wasn't, at sunrise like this, but in the night we got down briefly there all the way to 28 here east of Stark in our rural area. We were not initially expecting a freeze, but we had the freeze conditions because we didn't have the winds too much there. We had a situation where things were able to cool off quicker than anticipated, but we really warmed up today with the overall pattern here. We saw those winds there coming in, bringing in some warmer temperatures here. As I'll go ahead and show you right now, you see those winds come from the south. But that's going to change here pretty quick as we have our boundary coming in. You see how much cooler it is even around Montgomery there in the low 50s there. You see how we had the wind shift, and instead of coming out of the south and southwest, you're going to have winds coming out of the north and west there. And that's going to bring in chillier air as I'm looking at it, I'm tracking things. Some of this, precip may not be accumulating as much as it's indicating, but as you get further up here, we don't have METARs showing in some of this, even though I pull up the temperatures they're showing, but then you don't have the METARs in the actual reports. That'll be something we'll be watching tomorrow to see how things set up, whether it's rain, snow, or, at some points the radar may be picking up on stuff that's not quite even reaching the surface tomorrow. We shall see. But you can see here the snow indicators up toward like Kansas there and Missouri. And we're just seeing, eventually we're going to be seeing some of those get much closer, to home. And in fact, in parts of our covered area tomorrow, as we have that colder air coming on in. So you see out in the 30s in Arkansas right now, and even northwest Mississippi. But you see how warm it is here. We warmed up drastically compared to yesterday. We were, as we were looking there yesterday morning, we were at 17.5 for east of Stark, rounds up to 18. And then as you look here, and as you track things, I know, just crazy how we go from over 100 in the summer to so cold, and then, up to, 70 plus today, and then tomorrow it's going to be much colder. Let me go ahead and get some of the model guidance here now for some of the viewers at home. And I'm switching some things over as I started to put on the model information here. I am going to look to see if there's any questions or comments from any of the viewers at home, but let me go ahead and pull up this. This is the precip, and then you see some white stuff, snow there in Alabama. This is what the indication could be at 3 a.m. Central Time on that Sunday, 4 a.m. Eastern Time. So again, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things on that Sunday, 4 a.m. Eastern Time, 3 a.m. Central Time there, we won't have to be doing coverage probably that early, but we will be on tomorrow giving you the latest updates as things do, worsen there towards some of our areas. Not going to be just extremely bad. Not going to be like last year where it was days and days before you could travel really safely in some areas. It's not going to be like that, but it's going to be maybe, something where you're going to have reduced visibility. May, be advisable to try. And I know it's a tricky give and take here. It depends on where you are and how close you are, and we haven't had something. I'm having trouble finding a good comparison. Maybe some folks are saying 2018, but we had more accumulation then. This is going to be something where the surface temperature is above freezing here. Even though it's going to have the snow coming down. So, if it's something that you think you can travel through, you might be able to make it out of church. I'm talking about South Georgia or western Big Bend counties, further over. It's just going to be rain or not even having that, and you'll be all right. Just be careful. Watch out for slick spots on the road. It has been pretty dry lately, so we have to watch out for some of that because of the rain and the oils mixing. But, a lot of you'll be okay to go out to church, but, just it kind of depends on your eyesight and things like that, honestly, because this is something it's hard to compare because, other parts of the country, we have this more often, but around here, it's a situation where other parts of the country, they, see snow is not accumulating, it's not that big of a deal. But around here, people aren't used to driving, and you might just have a situation where people are kind of, obviously you shouldn't be taking pictures behind the wheel, but if people are distracted, even, we could have accidents just because of that, even if it's not that inclement. But you see how things evolve here. This is 6 a.m. Eastern time, 7 a.m. Eastern. You see how we started to see that white come into play here according to these RRR high resolution model. And I know some of this hadn't been indicating things that's good, but as we get closer, we're really just focusing on some of these high res models more than anything now. So, not a guarantee it's going to set up, exactly or even really close to like this. It won't be exact, obviously, no model ever is, but, not a guarantee it'll even be, really similar to this, but it should be some type, of a general idea this can give us here. And this shows some, snow acts and at least flurries mixing in here around Defeniak Springs in the Florida Panhandle. This is west of our area here, but then you get in South Alabama, also west of our area, Dothan, Geneva, Enterprise. This is at 7 a.m. tomorrow. That's Eastern time, 6 a.m. in the Central Zone. But getting to our Eastern time zone in our covered area, you started to see some snow mixing in maybe by 7 a.m. here around Quitman County, around Cuthbert, around Fort Gaines here, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things, as we try to dive in deep. I mean, I'm looking, at this, I'm looking at other information when I'm talking to you to make sure I'm getting the latest updates here as well. But you see, this is 7 a.m. here tomorrow Eastern time as we're looking here. We have the winter weather advisory in play here as we look towards some of our different counties. Some of these zones are starting us off as early as 4, out toward Tallahassee County from like 4 a.m. to noon. The Jacksonville counties in general here, and sometimes these change on us, but just looking at the, headlines here, look like 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. for Atkinson and Coffee and the Jacksonville Weather Service jurisdiction. Again, in Georgia, not for Jacksonville, not for Stark, not for Gainesville, not even for Lake City probably either, but further to the north and west here is what we're talking. Tallahassee's kind of in an iffy spot because you're not under an alert, but I think there'll be some flurries mixing in. It's going to be a close call in Leon and Gadsden counties. We're thinking we'd probably even, have a better chance of that earlier on. It seems like things are getting more confined to those northwestern counties, but the totals for those areas are going up a little bit in the modeling in our northwestern and northern zones here. So this is 7 a.m. tomorrow, 8 a.m. You see how it starts to expand pretty rapidly here past sunrise. So, in our area, you may not, if you're in these zones here, you may not even have to really get up, before the sun comes up. You'll be able to see it. It's going to be cloudy, you would think here as we're looking and tracking things, obviously. So it's not going to be like sun and snow or something. But, as you look here, you have the clouds, you have the snow there, but you have daylight is what I'm trying to get at here. At least you're able to kind of get some good pictures. This could be pretty good picture weather for if you're, not maybe, especially in the east, taking it up the ground, but the elevated surfaces and just in the, in the air there, it could be something that, is coming down pretty good. I mean, this last year that was a lot heavier than this. It's weird because, you don't get this every year. Before last year, you have to go back really to 2018. We had some different events. We had a couple of them actually, but, one was less than another. That one event really localized in the same, period there. And before that, we had a 2014 event. I'm going to look back at some of that, but we're not going to have the sleet and the freezing rain like what we had then, and really, and what we had last year. This should not be near as treacherous for travel here, near as treacherous, as we're looking and tracking things here, in the overall pattern. As some of the past events overall, but there will be, at points of reduced visibility on the roads. I mean, this is an odd scenario here because you have fog, and not in this case directly is not what I'm trying to say here, but what I'm saying is just fog reduces visibility. Excuse me, as we're tracking things and as we're looking at things. I know it's a situation. As we give you guys the very latest here, that fog can definitely, in that instance, reduce visibility. Well, here, as we're looking and as we're tracking things, we're going to have reduced visibility because of the snowy weather. And I'm looking at some of the visibility indicators on SRRR, and yeah, it's showing it down to, quarter mile visibility, give or take, in some of these spots. So, looking at that behind the scenes, I can't plot that on here. So yeah, you're going to have reduced visibility here because of the snowfall, which is, again, something we're not really used to dealing with around here. That would seem to be something that you got to be careful about, even if it's not, bad on the ground, and on the ground level as much because the surface is above freezing. You could have issues there. You could have issues there because of, that reduced visibility. I mean, Weather Service Tallahassee says little to no travel impact expected, though, and that would generally be the case. Again, I would say just, you have, when you're driving, though, how fog can be and the like. I know we could have, this on those mainly grassy surfaces, elevated surfaces, more than anything. But as we go ahead and look here now, I know we'll look up and down this because Macon's under a winter storm warning there. You get toward Bibb and Houston counties outside of our area. You can kind of see here we do have some of the snow coming on down there at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning there. And there is a chance that could be more upwards of 3 inches at the maximum, according to the Weather Service in Peachtree City. So again, there, the Atlanta Weather Service office, that region, that goes all the way down there to the south. Atlanta actually not under this because of where the situation is expected in terms of the profiles atmospherically to cut off, with the weather scenario. But 1 to 3 inches possible there as we're looking toward Bibb, Twiggs, Wilkinson, Macon, Peach, Houston, Bleckley, Lawrence, Sumter, Dooley, Crisp, Pulaski, Wilcox, and Dodge counties. So I know as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things there, we're monitoring that carefully, because that could be a little bit more impactful as you're headed up I-75. Not a huge, extreme event, but 1 to 3 inches around Macon still isn't something that happens, every day, every year even. So that's something to bear in mind north of our covered area, as you're looking at things around, again, Bibb County, Houston County. And I know it is Houston County. There, we have like Houston County and the city of Houston in different places, but in Georgia, it's pronounced Houston for folks that, aren't familiar. But as you look there and as you track here, you can see I will look back down toward the south and the west. Again, here toward our area, this is 8 a.m. Blakely, and it isn't going to be exactly right, but Edison, Damascus there. We had that bad tornado there a few years ago that caused some folks, some big time problems there. You'll start to get in some of that snow there at 8 a.m. and then you have 9 a.m. You can see 10 a.m. there. We started to really see this come across here. Some of our southwestern Georgia communities. You see some mixing of snow and rain there around Bainbridge and Cairo. This is at 10 a.m. In Gadsden County, some mix of rain and snow. Out toward the west, it's not going to be much snow, but there's going to probably be some snow. Not near as much as last year. Don't get me wrong. That was a historic event. This is still something that doesn't happen every day or every year by any stretch, but not historic probably, but still impactful. I mean, the idea of having snow in Florida, accumulating snow somewhere 2 years in a row, that's something we don't really see. So that's still, in that way, it's historic, but this isn't going to be, the accumulations are not even enough, to be, something for most of the region in Florida to trigger alerts. Now, there is a winter weather advisory just for Mariana. That's the only zone in Florida, Jackson County, this west of our area, that is under a winter weather advisory, because there is a chance there, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here, as we look at the different maps, I know there is a chance there in Mariana and Jackson County there, that there could end up being, snow there that accumulates a little bit, maybe up to 1 inch there. So, that's something that's, if that accumulates up to 1 inch, that's something, that's Florida snow. That's probably the best spot, best chance of having it in Florida would be in the Mariana area, maybe a couple counties west, but that's a, different type of thing here in terms of, as I look, I mean, the Phoenix Springs could have it. They're not under the alert. And I'll show you some of the other modeling. I know sometimes, too, there's different criteria based on local readiness, based on just how much they can get this, the reoccurrence intervals and things like that. So there's a chance, even though the only one in the state under the alert is Jackson, it's possible a couple of those counties out further west could get, some snow here as well to accumulate. That's pretty similar. So we're talking about some of the zones there, around Bonifay and the like there. So it's a little tricky with that because different, zones sometimes have different criteria. I know the Weather Service LS, it does cover some of these counties further west. That's what kind of throws me off a little bit. But sometimes, we have different rules about whether to issue an alert because these areas, further west, sometimes here, I don't know the exact intervals, but sometimes it'd be a little more likely there, in theory, over the years to have snow. But again, as we go ahead and looking as we track things here, you can kind of see, you can see around Albany there. Again, that's 10 a.m. tomorrow morning there on that Sunday here on the 18th of January 2026. And now we're monitoring this here very carefully as we give you guys the very latest here on the situation. We're just trying to give you guys the very latest, obviously, on the ongoing scenario here as we look and as we track things here in the meteorology world. So I know you see around Albany and the like, this is at 10 a.m. So then you have Camilla, they're mixing there with snow at 10. You see they're up into ward areas there, around Ashburn there, for instance, on I-75, there could be snow at 10 a.m. Worth County, Sylvester, 10 a.m. could have snow on that Sunday here. 11 a.m. you can see here it's a mix of snow, and then you see how it cuts off around Tallahassee on the H-triple-R. If this happens, it may be a situation we have to further reduce, some chances. I've reduced them in some areas. The snow flurries. I still think it might get a backside flurry there. Some models are still being kind of aggressive and sowing some snow around Tallahassee. Let me see what the latest GFS is showing because that's just coming out here. I'm looking at it behind the scenes real quick. So I kind of pull that up. I'm going to pull up the most aggressive version, and it's, assuming how the snow ratios are a little bit different than what they're going to be. The more aggressive version of this here, and you kind of assume the ground was freezing, which it's not going to be. It says 4 inches of snow in Albany. I'm seeing up to 2 on my forecast here. The official forecast is only up to 1 inch here, but we're going to just, sometimes when you have the snow, it starts to kind of cool down and things. I know last year the forecasts were not really for over a half foot there around Albany. We thought there'd be a good bit, but, it really exceeded even what we were expecting. So I want to go on the higher end to be safe up there in some of our northern counties. But Tallahassee may not even get snow if you are an FSU student. I know if you were there last year, you had some. It was kind of more of that mix between sleet and freezing rain and the like there. It wasn't the funnest kind of, mixture. But this could be more snow and rain and just snow at some point. If you want to see that, you need to go up toward like Albany or somewhere around there probably. be very careful, obviously, because again, if you're going during the event, you're gonna have reduced visibility. So if you wanted to get out ahead of this, you probably have to drive up there before sunrise, which or go ahead and like get a room tonight or something. I don't know if that's something that many people would want to be doing, but the point being is that that if you wanted to really see snow, maybe Albany, if you really want to see this where you'd have to be. I know something I'm not. I tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and show this because this is very, very, very aggressive. What I'm about to say, and I don't. I think this is too aggressive. This is assuming the ground's going to be below freezing here, and the races are going to be different than what they are. But the latest GFS runs, this coming in here, it's just coming in, and let me just double check something real quick here. I want to show this to you, but I hesitate showing this to you, to be quite honest, in a way. You know what? I'm not going to show it on because it's trying to show a bullseye of snow there north of Panama City of over a half foot, which I find that kind of hard to believe, considering even Albany would only have 4 in an extreme scenario, and Tallahassee would have maybe only a flurry. So that's the extreme scenario I'm talking about, not what I'm showing you. I'll go ahead and see, is the GFS actually ready for me to show one here? Okay, it is now. It's loading. Sometimes this goes a little slower, but this is the extreme scenario. Granted, it's not going to show it near as aggressive because of the different ratios here, which is probably a good thing. You account for the warmer surface, but if you're not accounting for that different ratio, it's showing way much out there toward, areas further west. So you know what, it may be, that tells me it might be almost, this time, this is, a topic we talk about very little around here. This is not the topic I'm an expert at, for sure. Severe weather hurricanes, we've dealt with them enough, I know a lot, but what I would think here, out here is this would be very heavy snow, but if you're above freezing, the ground's not gonna, carry a lot of that, but it's gonna make it very tough to see in front of you, like how fog is, for instance. So that could be an issue here around sunrise on I-10 there, west of, Tallahassee there, and the like. So you see how, this looks pretty heavy. I mean, on here, it doesn't look that heavy, but for us, that's still enough. Again, the GFS, this is a view of it, a different view I have with different ratios on a different model site. So it's, way too high total because it's trying to assume the ground's below freezing. So there's a lot of different intricacies here that could throw us off a little bit tomorrow, is what I'm saying. But this is the latest GFS run. This coming in, it literally just came in here and it's still coming in, but that part of it, you see how it really starts to shrink the snow coverage, and it makes it even hard for Waycross to get much more than a flurry now, as we're looking up there toward Ware County. So that's something for the Jacksonville TV market. It might be hard to get much snow in Jacksonville counties, which could extend all the way to Ware. But I'm watching this, I'm tracking this. You see, this is later on. It's just rain probably further east, but as I'm going to go back it up here, I'm going to go back things up here a little bit. We're going to go ahead and this is, again, 10 a.m. tomorrow in the HRRR. I know I hadn't done good at first, but at this point we have to use higher res information. And this is the one that, is, when I say a lot, it's the one that, is easily seen in our system here. So you can see here, this is going to be 11 a.m. This is going to be noon. So you see how all of a sudden you start to see that snow, just kind of the different profiles here shift where it's more rain. Further down south in 75, you still have some snow at noon in Tifton and Ty and Ocilla there, Fitzgerald. But you see how a lot of this could just be rain all the way down toward Homerville and Waycross. I think a flurry or two can mix in, but you're not under the alert like Coffee County, Atkinson counties are. So you have to get further and further up. I was optimistic yesterday might get flurries mixing in here, a decent chance all the way down to Folkestone. Thinking about, we'd have her covered and then maybe, get in the car and go up there to try to see it. But it's looking less likely for that now on the latest information that I'm seeing here. I know, I've updated the graphics. I've shifted things downward. I honestly, this is how things are. They're so fluid. Honestly, probably could have shifted them even lower with some probabilities here. As I'll tell you those, I had to shift them lower, but if you want to see snow tomorrow, I'm gonna back this up. This is 10 a.m. You need to be in place before that. If you go to Cordell, somewhere like that, I see it outside of our area. If you really want to see it here, I mean, you might be able to see it, with a good amount in our area here. Chances are pretty high you will be able to do that in our far northwestern friends. But if you're already making the trip, you got to be careful, of course. There could be reduced visibility. It'd be advisable to get out ahead of it, really, before it starts snowing, so you can maximize it. And then, once it stops, it'll still be above freezing, it seems, in theory. As I put the temperature up, it says 35. Now, if it wasn't, then that could be a bigger issue. But, if it is 33, 34, 35, like what this is showing with my indicator here on the screen, it's a situation here, as you're driving up here, we're not going to have problems on the roads too much in terms of what's accumulated. So, again, this is maybe a Sunday, a holiday weekend. I would think people, if you haven't seen snow, and you're available to do it, this might be the event for you to see it, but you gotta be very careful. And still, with that reduced visibility during the event, it could be almost like a snow squall, Georgia style. It's not, like maybe what we see up in the Northeast, but where we have snow squall warnings. Again, this is something that we're not accustomed to talking about here, but it could come down pretty heavy for a bit, but it's not going to accumulate on the surface, but you'll be able to see it if you're up in like Cordell. But you start to see that slacking off there. You see Fitzgerald there. You can see Fitzgerald there around 12 o'clock. You see at 1 o'clock it starts to mainly just be rain. Maybe a few flurries there, if you look real close there north of Broxton, and then you have to get further up there, going between Macon and Savannah on the interstate there. Maybe a few flurries or some snow, but it really starts to change into just rain according to this. Now the GFS, well, that's showing something a bit different. I mean, it has quite a bit still lingering back further up before it ships that off eventually. Kind of interesting to see all these. That's something to see that difference there between HRRR this late in, between HRRR and GFS here, as we compare things at the same time frame. So all that snow on GFS, the latest run, and HRRR not really showing it up there. So that's something up in North Carolina, Virginia they're tracking for sure. I know, speaking of ongoing events, we do real quick, I'll take off the modeling and show you there is that, some wind, in some of these areas, for instance. You'll be able to see some of that, obviously, as we look and as we track things. We'll have some wind tomorrow we need to watch here. As we give you the latest, you see some wind. I know they're going to be watching weather for the NFL playoff game tomorrow up north. We see there's been some snow reports today in some of these spots, and you see snow squall warnings and the like. I know where the NFL is playing right now in Denver area, we're not seeing that too much there. So, in terms of weather impacts, in terms of any type of wintry precipitation, not coming up. Now, in terms of temperatures, they are cold. That's your dew points. That's dry, as you saw there. And we do have some breezy, and especially higher elevations. The winds are up there in Denver itself. We have some wind. I haven't turned on the game because we need to do this update, but that's ongoing right now there. Denver, hosting Buffalo in the NFL playoffs. But we're going to have an NFL game in Chicago tomorrow. We're going to have the one up in the Northeast as well for the Patriots game there against Houston and Foxborough near Boston. And then tonight's game, though, that's out west there, it's going to be up in Seattle there. So, not seeing the weather looks from this here, looks to be pretty good. So that is something that we want to see, obviously. As we go ahead and bring it back here local, we do have some precip showing up. Some of these are not, actually reaching the ground, false returns, because I have been in higher sensitivity mode. When I take that off, you see how some of that stuff goes away. And like, this one in River Valley or in Columbia County, Union County zone there, as we're looking and as we're tracking things, you see some light rain, though. It would seem some of this is reaching the ground there on Tallahassee and up toward Thomasville. But we have the wind shift that's coming later on. That's going to bring in some of that cooler air here as we're looking. I know we'll be watching tomorrow in some of these different areas, some of these different cameras, I would think, as we're looking at like the Georgia 511 perspectives, like as we're looking, let's say in Irwin County around Ocilla, we'll be looking at some of the different cameras. So let me go ahead and pull the one up now so we can do a little compare and contrast. As we may have snow in the air here coming down tomorrow. You can see what it looks like now. It looks pretty calm there tomorrow. it's going to be something where we have a situation too, as we look towards some of these different areas there, as we track things, obviously. We're going to have some wind in there, so that'll be something to follow, something to monitor here tomorrow as well. It may not be something just as extreme or anything like that, but gusty winds up maybe to 20, at some points there, and then just something will be kind of following that's coming through that can make things pretty nasty in some cases there. This is not, even if it's not hitting the ground much, it's not, much to make a snowman, and the roads in general be okay. It's like, how fog is. I mean, if you have blowing snow, and it's not just light snow, this is not something we're used to dealing with around here, is what I'm saying. You're going to have issues. You're going to have problems here. I know we have different folks like Nicole watching there on YouTube. I appreciate everybody tuning in and trusting me, as we just have to be kind of mindful here of things. Don't want to get folks caught off guard, for sure, as we're looking at, as we're tracking. I appreciate everybody tuning in and trusting me. Just a one-man band here on Cloud Weather. We're going to be giving you guys the very latest here as we get in toward that Sunday. So Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch there, and the website has interactive radars, some different model things as well. But again, we're going to go and zoom back out here, as we're looking here at the very latest, looking at some different things. I had some different, like severe parameters up, nothing to do with around here. Of course, we're going to have, some spin here, and that's going to be, helping us to get this, rain and some snow in here tomorrow, though, as we're looking, not severe weather by any stretch here locally. That is not going to happen in terms of tornadoes or, severe thunderstorm warnings, anything like that. But that's not on this card, in the cards here, as we're going to have temperatures that are going to be cool one year through the day. I mean, 50s, 40s, 30s, and then going to be the 20s tomorrow night. That's something, as we're tracking things, it's going to be very chilly here, as we're giving you guys the very latest, and things do drop here. It's going to be cold, maybe not quite as cold as Friday morning, but as we look toward Monday morning, that, MLK Day morning, different eventing light, people out and about, going to have to be, bundled up. I know probably not really people at the bus stop, but so that's, for school, that's the good thing, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. So, but as we look toward Tuesday and Wednesday morning, it's still going to be pretty chilly. A few degrees warmer, maybe not a hard freeze, but that's something we have to still be mindful of and stuff to be, careful with. But as we look here again, the winter weather advisory, again, some light and wet snow expected on Sunday in these noted counties. This is the official, information in terms of the counties that are highlighted, underlined, where we have a winter weather advisory, and that's what we're seeing. Snow is probably going to happen. The Arizona Fringe, maybe even where Florida and further southeast, is probably not going to happen here at this point. Maybe we get real lucky and get a real, few flurries or something, but right now, maybe, around Stark, when we have our rain, it's probably around 40-ish, degrees. Doesn't have to be below freezing. It's not going to be to have snow, but it does have to be with the profile, further up in the atmosphere. Right now, it looks like things are going to be a little too warm to have the, flurry activity here or anything really notable. Maybe we get lucky with a few rogue flurries here. Or something. We got lucky last year on the very back end, but we were right around freezing when that happened. We're going to be warmer than that when this comes through. Granted, the areas to the north, you're going to have some snow again at, points there. You're looking, it's going to be a pretty good bit above freezing, maybe later on just a little above, but it still be above freezing the whole time here. But I've seen, I say that and I worry a little because sometimes the models are a little off, and if we, if the models are wrong, then all of a sudden we actually have this to stick on the road, and that changes everything. But the models aren't showing that right now. It's showing everything will be above freezing for all our counties when the snow actually comes down on your Sunday. Again, freezing rain and sleet less likely in this scenario, though. Freezing rain probably won't happen. Sleet, probably won't happen either here, because of the way things are setting on up. So, again, just trying to give you the latest. Again, this is the map here, a covered area. It encompasses all that, but then the yellow, highlighted areas. I don't think I've shown a graphic exactly like this before. I've shown one similar, but this, it says a covered area, but then I have it pretty alert. The winter weather advisory here tomorrow, mostly, as we're looking here, We're talking about, that snowfall potential here. It's Georgia for our area, mostly in Georgia overall. It's just morning hours, except for out Coffee and Atkinson counties way that goes to 1. But it ends at noon. And the other areas, it starts at 4 to the west, starts at 7 further off toward the east. But don't, keep those times and, keep the event to it exactly. But 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. for Atkinson and Coffee in our area, and then all the other counties are 4 a.m. to noon there, further off toward the west. So, as we're looking here for the winter weather alert in place. So, I know Tallahassee office talking where light accumulations occur on Sunday morning. It'll mainly be on grassy surfaces. Little to no accumulation expected on roadways. Again, elevated surfaces, as I've alluded to, could be a different story, but on roadways, not so much. This would be good, pretty good. Sunday afternoon temperature to reach the 40s. Any accumulations will have the opportunity to melt away. And then the latest road conditions for the state you are calling from can be attained by calling 511. So we're watching road conditions tomorrow because this is something we're not, used to dealing with here, obviously. This is something we're not used to dealing with here as we're looking and as we're tracking things here, as we give you guys the very latest. So, again, we're just trying to keep you guys informed on the overall situation. So, let me go ahead and progress a little bit further here in the graphics. You can kind of see here, this is the chances that I have for late snow flurries on Sunday here. I've adjusted this from our late Thursday update, so it's only a 10% chance in Palm Coast, and that might be optimistic at this point. 20% for Gainesville, same thing. Probably not going to happen here, further down toward the south. This is something where, we do want this, and some of our last year's event, we were talking about ice concern, and that, there's an event where it's, like most things in weather, tornadoes, ice, you don't want snow. Well, sometimes this actually can be a happy thing, obviously. So, we really would have liked to have had that around Gainesville. Palm Coast is looking very unlikely there. Jacksonville, 40%, and that's probably optimistic at this point, honestly. Have to get pretty lucky to get some flurries, squeezing out. I do have 50% award to Swanee River Valley, Brunswick as well. We'll see again. More so though, Tallahassee, but off the Waycross. Still think flurries could definitely be on the table. The accumulations are more than that though. We'll see, but you see how the probability has gone way up there in our far northern counties there, around Albany, around Tipton, up to 90% now of at least flurries. Probably going to be more than that. Probably, some accumulation on the, elevated surfaces here. The ones, you have the ground temperatures above 32, the air surface temperature is. But, some of these, elevated surfaces, you could have this accumulate on those, car roofs, car tops, things like that. We have a 90% chance of that, and really probably a 90% chance of snow at this point, not just flurries. For Albany, Tipton area up there, you have, Douglas right there on the edge of that. You have Acela in there. You have, of course, areas there. Ashburn there, you kind of get the idea. So that's what we're talking, folks. And as I go ahead and see further down, this is a pretty, not a happy look. And honestly, at this point, the chance of any of these spots of getting snow flurries, say if you add all the probabilities together, this is probably a little high, a little too optimistic. I've lowered it all these by 10% from what I had the other day. It's probably going to be even, a lower chance than that at this point in the south. So if you want to see them tomorrow, you need to go north and west here, as I've alluded to. And then as I say, the overall snowfall forecast, I went up to 2 inches there for like Tipton and Albany and those points in between at the high end. It could be as low as a ½ inch, but probably going to at least get something there that does, kind of accumulate again. It's going to be grass and, the road, it's a good thing. It's not going to stick on the roads as much. As we're looking here, but because of the pavement temperature here, I say the surface, there's different factors that go into this here that we generally don't have to deal with around here, but so the pavement temperature should stay above 32, and that's the most important thing, thing here with the different things that are ongoing on the grassy surfaces. This still could accumulate in that, but, ½ inch to 2 inches here of snow over in Albany and Tipton is what I'm going with. The official number is a little lower than some of this here. Now, to the south, honestly, some of these numbers may be a little optimistic to the south. Tallahassee, maybe they get lucky and get a half inch, but we're trending down. The latest runs have shown more and more consistency earlier on. Still, holding out hope there. Maybe Tallahassee does get some, we get lucky if, you want to see that there at FSU and FAMU and at Tallahassee State College and the like. But we'll see. The chances are going down, though, and it may, 0 to 0.5, and zeros for these other areas here, Brunswick and Swanee River Valley, might be a little bit more realistic. But 0.5 to 2, there's a chance that could be underdoing it a little bit in our far northwestern counties, is what I'm saying here as I'm looking at them, tracking things here. As I've been going through this, updating things to the day. And just, I've updated some of this, a couple hours ago now, in just the last couple hours. These, numbers, honestly, it's so fluid. Things change in the modeling, and we get more consensus here. And I think it's going to be tough to get a half inch of snow in Tallahassee, Valdosta, or Waycross. Maybe it happens. You never know. Temperatures are a little bit off in the temperature profile, but 2 inches, I think, is definitely possible in our northwestern counties, and some of those isolated areas could get even a little bit more than that. So, it's something to keep in mind. And Southern Alabama, and that's out of our area, Southern Alabama, and then west of Liberty County is too. But those areas could also get a little bit luckier here. We'll see, Jackson County, Florida, and Southern Alabama, and the like. So, it's a tricky situation here as we're looking. And as we're tracking things here, I know Dothan there, if you're watching just outside of area, you're under a winter weather advisory there. As I'm looking here and as I'm tracking things, as I'm giving you guys the very latest on the situation. So, again, we're watching all this here for you. Again, we'll be live tomorrow here with the latest, obviously, as the event progresses. So make sure you tune in on all the different platforms. We're planning to be providing some live coverage of this. It's not, like last year where we were on for like a better part of 18 hours, I think it was, like going from like 5 p.m. to about 9 a.m. We had to be on there, and I was getting sick at the end of that, and the next day I had 103 fever, but that's a story for a different day. But anyway, this is not going to be quite like that here in terms of the weather, the ongoing situation as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So, again, we're talking about, that was like, 16, 18 hours of coverage in. This time it would probably be around 4 hours, give or take here, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on how things progress. Of course, we were doing updates like every hour, or at least, if not more than that at points. Points we were talking for a while, but not going to be, to that level. Maybe end up talking a little bit more at certain points, based on how things progress. It's a lot shorter time frame. It's moving out a lot quicker than that system last year. Now, speaking of last year, we were on the air for hours. We'll flash back to some of that coverage last year here, just really fast to give you, look, this was around midnight, and last year was a lot more, a lot more notable than what this will be, but it's still going to be impactful. But here's a quick look back at last year in 2025. Really accumulating here. These are going to be visuals you remember in some cases for a lifetime here, making those lifetime memories, but you also got to stay safe with all that ice, because that can be very hazardous, obviously. Just looking back there at 2025, and that covered last year of that winter weather event. But as we go ahead, and this is what we're expecting tomorrow, not a half foot. We're showing you there in Thomas County. You're not going to get as much as you got last year either. It doesn't seem. Here we had all that mix of sleet and ice. Things, in terms of travel, were really paralyzed for days. Not expecting that here, luckily. That's the good news. Now, as we look at more things, this is what we had last year from that event. Not near as much as our counterparts off toward the west. You can see my jacket there with some of those tiny snow flurries. As we look here and as we track things, that was the story last year. That's best case scenario. Tomorrow it's getting something like that here. Tomorrow, that's our best case scenario. Probably not even going to get that. That was like our worst, case, lower in terms of the fun scenario. We were hoping for more in terms of snow, not ice, obviously, though. We had a little bit of ice here. We had got just below freezing for an hour or so, as I recall, but, we didn't have much ice concerns here but we wanted snow. That was all we got. That, tomorrow we'd be lucky if we got something like this here, East Historic. I'm not anticipating even this at this point. Now, wanted to see something else because I was trying to find some old pictures of our 2010 event, and instead I found some event pictures from when I was back at FSU in 2014. But this is pretty much an example of what we're not going to see tomorrow. If you look at this traffic light, this was above there, the road by the bookstore, in the Union. I know it's now merged, but back then they were, two separate things there, and the road crossing between them. That was the traffic light with the icicles hanging off. If you look close at the bottom, you can kind of see. You can kind of see what we're talking about there with that. That's not what we're going to see tomorrow. Not going to see this. Do not expect that tomorrow because that was freezing rain and sleet. We didn't have any snow with that at all around Tallahassee. Anyway, tomorrow be raining. If you're lucky, some snow in there. It's the opposite pretty much of that event in some ways. Just for comparison's sake, I know I have another couple photos of 2014 here. The first picture is a table there by the Union, the old Union there. That was freezing rain. That was during the day. At night, the second table was a picture. It looks like snow, but no, it's sleet. I wish it was snow, but no. It was sleet there, 2014. Not expecting the freezing rain. Maybe we get a little sleet. We'll see. That's always kind of tough to forecast, the sleet aspect of things, because we weren't necessarily thinking we'd get that much sleet that night. That was something doing coverage there in the morning, at FSU there on FSU Weather on the live stream website there and the like. And, we thought there'd be some hazards. Things were slick that night, but, that sleet there, that was something that's not always easy to pick up in the models. And we had that night there, not really expecting the sleet, not expecting the freezing rain at all because we're going to be above freezing. That's how you get freezing rain there. I know the event I wanted to see pictures of was from Stark in 2010. We got some flurries, some snow flurries, and it was comparable to 2025. That was a surprise event. I don't have those pictures in here, so I'm still looking for that stuff. But I just wanted to see how some examples of some precip types here. And that was Scherzer Library, outside of Scherzer Library in Cawthon Hall, the right picture there, by the way, there, January of 2014. So that was a pretty, impressive photo there, quite honestly. I hadn't had these up in my weather coverage before because it's pulling them off some old computer information there, going through some backup and the like there, and grabbing some of these off of there from what I had years ago. But again, as we go ahead and see some other past pictures, I've been showing these to you a lot. Tomorrow is the 49th anniversary of snow in Hampton there. And, even we had some of that flurriness in Miami and Central Florida. There was snow. And, yeah, there was some different snow there 49 years ago. This is, a look here at some family photos. My late grandmother out there with this. My mom there, and the like. And you can see here the snow. You can see how it really accumulated. Not going to have that here indoors, Stark, Jacksonville, Gainesville tomorrow. Lake City, not going to happen there tomorrow like that. As the models go, higher with the consensus. Further off there toward Tallahassee, still probably not going to happen like this. Maybe, further out west of our area, maybe some place like Jackson County in Florida, or somewhere at Albany or Ocilla or Tipton. Maybe gets lucky, and probably more likely in a winter storm warning to somebody like Cordell or, different offices have different rules about issuing the alerts, but as for the higher snow potential looks to be, like Cordell or Americus or somewhere up there, more likely to have some type of snow accumulation like this. For ground where you have the footprints in it, on the car top. Well, that could happen. Now, actually, it looks like it's all the way on the windshield there, too. And that might happen to some degree. I know sometimes, different windshields now might not really, with the temperatures might not get to that. But yeah, not going to happen like this in Bradford County tomorrow, but it is the 49th anniversary of this happening here in the region. Some old family photos there from Hampton. And then you see here the local freeze frost snow story here. As we're looking and as we're tracking the hard freeze, likely there early Monday for some, damagingly low air temperatures. So I wanted to remind this is something that's going to affect Stark potentially Monday morning. So you just want to protect people, you want to protect pets, plants, and pipes. As we're looking and as we're tracking here, we're just, wanting to be careful again, because I know yesterday morning down to 18, you want to run those faucets. sometimes, you got to be careful because sometimes that water can freeze there in the pipes, so you really want to make sure that doesn't happen, or if it does happen, it's something where you're really prepared, to kind of deal with that here on the fly before things were to burst. But as you look here, dangerously cold for portions of our region, some snow expected in parts of South Georgia there on Sunday. It's not going to be extreme cold when that happens, but as we get toward tomorrow night, it's going to be very chilly. I know during the day it's going to be breezy to windy though, and that will be something to factor in. So those wind chills will be cold, and even though we're going to be above freezing when the snow happens, which is odd. I know it's about temperature profiles as you go along, and reason why that happens. But as you look down toward the surface there, we're going to be above freezing. So it sounds odd, but it's going to happen tomorrow in South Georgia for sure, as we're looking at a covered area. And then, some of those zones, but not everybody. And then freeze and frost concerns, I want to reiterate, they do linger Tuesday and Wednesday here. So, that, 3 nights in a row of a freeze probably, or at least a frost, for many of you. Make sure you're careful with space heaters. You probably don't want to be using them unless you have to, because, those can flip over and the like. I know, just be careful. I know sometimes people even can lose power. We had some of that with Clear Electric yesterday morning. There with some power outages on the power outage map and the like. So just, be aware of that too. Hopefully it doesn't happen. Obviously you want to bundle up, put some extra covered on jackets on and the like if that happens for a short period. And if you're trying to if you're using a candle to try to heat or get light in that, be careful too. That's not something you really want to do, as we talk about in hurricane, unless you have to, because those can flip and cause a fire as well. So it's, something you have to think about sometimes. In the cold, sometimes things can just go out when we're very, very cold. Now, as we go ahead and, we're starting to wrap up, but you see late Saturday through late Sunday there, you can see that rainfall forecast around Tallahassee and precip forecast. What I'm showing you this for is because whether we get rain here or snow or whatever mixture we get, we're going to have, liquid there that still remains, but the winds did get rid of most of that. But with the cloud cover, if we don't, depending on how much, the clouds move out and the like, if things, if we have some lingering moisture on the ground, and the like, we could, have some lingering black ice here, in a few spots. We'll have for Sunday night and the Monday, because we do get a, below freezing then. We see around Stark there, we get between 1/4 and 1/2 inch of rain. Probably not going to be snow at this point. I'd be surprised. They can't, ever say never. I said, there's a small chance of flurries here. I think 30% for Stark. It's probably a little optimistic at this point, but further to the north and west, we're probably going to have it, as I've alluded to here many times. We're going to probably have, some areas could get 2 inches in our area tomorrow, as I was saying in the forecast there. But be careful, black ice. This is something I had in here, I think, from last year from the, weather service there from NOAA. That's black ice. It can form on any road. Talk about, sometimes we had a mountain snow last year. Well, this year, it talks about at the bottom here, just use caution driving during freezing temperatures after rain. So eventually, granted the precipitation's cut off for early to mid-afternoon, but after the sun goes down, if there's any lingering puddles, some of that could be, I don't know how much we're going to have of that because we're in a drought, but if we have any lingering puddles here, then that could, in theory, be an issue for us. So we'll have to just be cognizant of that as we look at the overall situation. I know the drought monitor does indicate we're pretty dry, so we need precip here more than anything, as we've talked about, as we've alluded to here, indoor the Weather Center a lot here lately in the coverage. So we do need the precip here as we look and as we track things here. I know, but we don't really want wintry weather if it's going to be a hazard, but a lot of this actually won't be a hazard here, as we give you guys the very latest here on the overall situation. So, by the way, if you're wondering why that picture was so blurry, the snow flurry last year, it's because, it's like happening for a minute or two. That's how little it happened last year. It's just dark, and I was taking a video and having to take screenshots out of that to even be able to pick up on the flurries. That's how little they were last year. But as we go ahead and say here the winter weather advisory again, this is where the concern, it would lie. And some of the snow, it can reduce that visibility, how fog can, give or take. Trying to explain this here is hard to, because it's not something we're used to. Having above freezing ground, where it's not going to be too bad on the roads themselves, but it's going to be hazardous there as we're looking and as we're tracking things there. Maybe for that reduced visibility, how fog is, sometimes not freezing fog directly, but just how fog is there. So it's a different situation. Just remember some light and wet snow expected on Sunday there in the noted counties. We'll be giving you guys the latest tomorrow on this weather scenario, obviously, as the situation does evolve, as we need to. We'll be on the air with you guys here, giving you the very latest on this winter weather situation. So make sure you keep it tuned here. Again, in some area, it's not going to be anything at all. Palm Coast, it's not going to be anything except, of course, on a Sunday night. Now, we will have to watch out there for some cold temperatures again. But, as we do have a freeze watch for all of our Jacksonville counties there covered by the Weather Service in Jacksonville. But again, you have that winter weather advisory there. As we're looking, as we're tracking, I see a question here from one of the viewers asking, will there be snow in Florida tomorrow? My answer to that is, well, if it's in our area here, it'd probably be more in the form of flurries at this point. Even if Tallahassee gets some, probably more about flurries there. But if you go out to like Jackson County or maybe out toward further zones there, you talk about Defuniak Springs. So, of course, we're talking about areas there like Walton County, that zone, give or take there. You're going to be in a situation here where we do, maybe talk about some of that, that actually could, accumulate more than this flurry that's not on this map. But as I look at and as I track things, we're talking further out, Holmes County, Walton, Washington, Jackson, of course, somewhere around there could have some in Florida here it's a combination of moisture and cold temperature profile coming together. So, if you want to see snow in Florida tomorrow, probably need to go just west of the recovered area again, like Jackson County, or somewhere around there. You definitely could see it in our, as I've talked about on the graphics in our area here. But as you look here toward Mariana and the like, it's more likely if you want to see it in Florida there, at Chipley or Defuniak Springs. But if you're really going to have a better chance of just seeing it in general and not just say snow in Florida, you do want to go further to the north, and you probably want to be in some of those, one of those highlighted zones in our area, or even, you may want to get north of our area there to pretty much guarantee yourself some accumulating snow if you're already making the trip. As we're looking and as we're tracking things, I do think it's going to happen tomorrow. It's just there's certain factors that go into this that are a little bit tricky to have. This is a winter storm warning here that's in place. See, Americus, Cordele, Abbeville, Vienna there. You have Cochrane there, Eastman, Dublin, Warner Robins, Irwinton, Macon. You want to get Oglethorpe, somewhere around there, maybe a little bit more likely there. Again, these are out of our area, though, all these zones here, as we're looking and as we're tracking here the latest. But there's that winter storm warning for Sumter, Crisp County, Dooley County, Macon, Peach, Houston, Bleckley, Pulaski, Dodge, Wilcox there, Lawrence, Wilkinson, Twiggs, Bibb. You kind of get the idea further up toward the north. So that's something to keep in mind up I-75. So again, that's kind of the storyline right now. I think we've talked about it enough. Again, if you're watching in dark, that's where we're at. Not going to see snow that accumulates for sure. You're probably not going to even see any flurries here. It looks pretty unlikely here at this point, but we'll be watching, of course, and giving you the latest here as conditions warrant for other areas like that are under that winter weather advisory. It's a step below the winter storm warning. We didn't get a winter storm watch. They didn't even get one up north because it's been an uncertain forecast. It's starting to become more certain. Again, the yellow areas there, the underlying counties there, that's what we're talking about, winter weather that is noteworthy. Some light and wet snow expected on Sunday in the noted counties. Definitely could reduce visibility at times. So, even if we don't actually have that snow there, in a situation where it's actually, sticking there to the ground, it still could be an issue. So, we're going to go ahead and show you real quick a look outside here. We're at east of Stark, and I don't have that aligned for some reason. Okay, but again, I must have got bumped. But anyway, you can kind of see a quick look there outside on everything. And, it's calm right now. But as we look ahead here tomorrow, it's going to be, something that's a different story, obviously, as we're looking and as we're tracking things, in terms of some rain, at least here east of Stark and the like. So, again, we'll be watching things, we'll be tracking things here in toward the Weather Center. So, again, just trying to give you guys the very latest on everything, obviously, here as things progress. So, winter weather advisory tomorrow, and we'll be on top of it for you. For now, meteorologist Casey Cloud. Have a great night. Stay safe, and we'll be back tomorrow with more coverage, as conditions warrant.